Hello everybody. Today we have a webcast that we're going to talk about the customer experience transformation in B2B industries. Before I introduce my guest speaker and the content, let me first introduce myself. My name is Demet Tunç. I'm leading the Customer Experience Council for the Conference Board. And I will also be leading a new council that we're going to launch in June on market insights and analytics. Let me first update you on a couple of housekeeping rules. During the presentation, you can ask questions via the chat box that appears at the bottom left of your screen. You can download the presentation. And at the end of the webcast, there will be a very brief evaluation form. We would be very happy if you could fill that form in so that we improve ourselves for the future webcasts. Please feel free to share this program with your colleagues within your network. The presentation and the webcast is available on demand for the ones that are interested. Today, I have an exciting speaker from McKinsey, Thilo. Welcome. He's an associate partner at McKinsey. He's been working for the company for 7 years and has a background coming from the business in the automotive. He's an expert in marketing and sales, and his focus is in B2B, mainly in chemicals, basic materials, energy, electronics, and machinery businesses. Thilo has an MBA from Cambridge University, but most importantly, he's a recent father. He just became a father. He's got a 3-month-old boy, and we are very happy that he's here with us, and his son could watch this webcast when he grows older. Yeah. All right, welcome, Thilo. It's a pleasure to have you here. I know that you're so passionate about customer experience, and today, I would like to understand what makes you that passionate about the customers and how McKinsey is transforming the companies into a more customer-centric mindset.
Thank you, Demet. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
How do I control this now?
Okay.
So let me talk a bit about the basis of what we're going to talk about today. Customer experience is a significant portion of the work that we do in McKinsey's marketing and sales practice. And on the left of the page you're seeing, we have an overview of the studies or projects that we have done on customer experience. And it's a broad selection of industries. Most of the industries we're seeing here are more B2C focused, but we're seeing a lot of growth in customer experience in more B2B heavy industries like chemicals, basic materials, energy, the space that I'm working in. I'm going to talk about insights from that client work of our firm as a whole, from my work personally with companies in that space, so customer experience projects in those areas, and a study that we've undertaken a couple of years ago where we've specifically looked into success factors that differentiate customer experience leaders from everyone else.
Okay, and are you also going to elaborate on a specific business case, on a real business case from these industries?
Yes. In the second half of the presentation, we're going to talk about a case where we've helped a specialty chemicals company become more customer-centric and use that as a means to get significant bottom line impact from the transformation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we get into the practicalities.
Okay, that's very good.
But first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about why it is important to focus on customer experience, what the case to make is, because the programs are significant investments. Yes, you can start small and focus on one process or customer journey at a time. But if you really want to transform the experience that you are delivering to your customers, it often is a multi-year journey and a significant investment. So it's important to understand what you can gain.
And it's an investment also on people.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, because you need to make sure that you have the right resources to transform the company before you start even talking about the budget impact, right?
Yes, it's a people investment on two sides. First of all, you of course need to build the capabilities, train people, maybe hire some people, but it also leads to better outcomes on the people side. At the end of a customer experience transformation, you can expect to have a more satisfied and more engaged workforce, and that's one of the payoffs that you will be getting.
So actually, these transformations does not only have an impact on NPS and customer satisfaction, but it probably has an impact on employee engagement.
Yes, we're getting to what I have on the slide faster than I want to.
Okay, sorry.
It's customer experience is it's the only approach in the marketing and sales space that I know that simultaneously improves across multiple levers that typically are contradictory. So when you do a customer experience transformation, you typically improve your customer satisfaction. That's what it is all about. And we see NPS improvements of between 25 to 40 points in most of the companies that we're working with. You will definitely see revenue growth to the tune of 10 to 15% because more satisfied customers will churn less, they will order more, you grow your share of wallet, you'll increase your win rate. And the drivers of that are, for example, just being faster, right? Having a quicker turnaround time for your quotations can already make a big difference. And you'll improve profitability because customer experience is very much about delivering what's important to the customer and not doing anything else. So it is a means of getting waste out of the company and improving bottom line results. This also shows in the...
It's all impact driven.
Yes, it is very much impact driven. And I'm not even sure if customer experience is the best name for this kind of transformation because it's really a transformation that delivers bottom line results. And you come at it from a customer perspective. It's not something that's just about perception and making customers happy. It delivers results. And it also shows an aggregate, and that's what you have on the left side of this chart, where you see an analysis of data that Medallia, the customer experience measurement firm, have collected. And there they are comparing the total return to shareholders growth of customer experience leaders, the S&P 500 index, and customer experience laggards, so grouped by their NPS scores. And you see that the leaders have 1.4 to 1.6 times the TRS growth of the S&P 500. So it is a significant driver of results, and this relationship shows clearly on the chart. And in that sample, you have about half B2B and half B2C companies, so the relationship holds. I also think it'll grow more pronounced in the future because there are a couple of forces at play that make customer experience even more important for B2B companies than it was in the future. And one of that is changing expectations. So buyers are also B2C customers. They're used to the Amazon experience, and when we surveyed how their expectations have changed over time, we found that, for example, only 15% of B2B buyers still want to interact with a person when they reorder. That is, 85% of them think it's a waste of time. And when I reflect on how many companies still do business, that's not really reflected there, right?
But in terms of customer experience transformation, would you say that B2C is more advanced compared to B2B? Or is B2B going
I think the focus has certainly started earlier in B2C. It's been big in banking, especially, and telco for a while. But I think B2B is catching up. And we'll also get to the difference in nature. I think it will look a bit different. In B2B, you have to go much deeper into the back office processes and deal with all the complexity. B2C is much more standardized, and it's about digitizing front ends. But it's very relevant, and I think companies are getting the hang of it.
All right.
The second driver of why it's becoming even more important is commoditization. Many industries are seeing that knowledge gets more accessible. If you still want to differentiate and get a premium for the offering you have, and it's not the product, then it needs to be the experience. You need to be easy to do business with, and this is something that will drive value for companies. And
it's not the products and the services, it's the experience that the customers are going through where it differentiates the companies from each other.
Yes. When you say service, I'm hesitating because that already drives the experience, right?
Yeah,
so service right. is, do you get your product in time, for example? Do you get it in full?
Solutions might be a better word, products and solutions, because in the solution part we'll develop still components of products that come to a solution, but service is already the customer experience. You're right.
Yeah. And then the last driver is new entrants in the B2B space. I think the most well-known ones will be Alibaba and Amazon B2B, who compete on customer experience and who initially focus on the tail end of customers, where speed and ease of doing business matters more than anything else. And if you're a buyer, you just want to get through with that. But they'll work their way upwards. Mm-hmm. And so if you're an incumbent, it's important to be ready.
Okay.
Now, if you want to transform the experience of your company, what we have found is that in general, you need to have three big components in place. You need to have to build conviction and purpose in your company. You need to make sure that everyone in the company understands the narrative, that they understand that customer experience is central, and that the aspiration and the top team is very clear about that is that you will be a leader on customer experience in your industry. That then also needs to be visible. If it's just a statement, that's not very much. It won't change behavior. So you need to make sure that you really engineer the culture change, that you have leaders in your companies role model the behavior that you are telling people they need to show, and that you change the narrative of who the company is, the sort of language that gets used, the things that get celebrated, and the habits that you have as an organization. And you can be very conscious about doing that.
Thilo, I'm going to interrupt. I just realized that I forgot to say something. By watching this webcast, you can earn CP credits. And to be able to do so, there will be 3 times pop-up screens where you need to click during the presentation. Just to give you a hint, if you want to earn the credits now, you need to click on the pop-up box that appears on the screen. And also, you can ask questions anytime during the webcast by typing your question. I'll pass the question over to Thilo. Sorry for interrupting. Please go ahead.
No worries.
I didn't want to miss people missing the credits.
Getting back to that, the last element in that top box that we have there, building conviction and purpose, is having the customer reflected in your organization. I mean, so many organizations are still set up by region, by function, maybe by product that's already getting closer to customer needs. But we firmly believe that the customer needs to be reflected in the organization. And the most likely way of doing that is by having some sort of journey responsibility. So having a team of people work together to deliver an outcome that your customers want. Like, for example, I reorder a product. Mm-hmm. And that is then also how you would go about driving the transformation. That's a middle part of our pyramid here, that you transform and digitize journeys. And all of that starts by identifying what are the kind of journeys that you have in your company and that matter to customers.
Are all the journeys going to be digitized in the future, or no?
So digital will be an enabler in all of the journeys, I believe. But in most B2B companies, you will have too much complexity. You might not have the volumes to justify full digitization, and customers don't necessarily want it. It helps if you have a digital backbone, but if you have high stakes, complex business decisions, most people still want to talk to a person, at least for some of the journeys, at least when something goes wrong. So we don't think that in B2B this means 100% digital, but you will need to have digital capabilities on every one of your transformation teams, because there'll always be an element, probably more in the back end of the processes, where that's needed.
So it's still human to human before it's B2B.
In many cases, it'll still be human to human. One exception is probably reordering that I just mentioned, where people say, clearly, I don't need to talk to a person to do that. Ideally, why don't you do that for me and predict what I need, because you know my patterns.
Yeah.
So that will eventually go 100% digital. In many other areas, I believe we're a long way away from that. So you need to define what journeys you have in the company and which ones matter most for the customer. And typically it's 5 to 7. We see this very consistently across companies, that you can summarize the processes and outcomes that are important for your customers as 5 to 7 journeys. And that's also something that you can meaningfully organize around and then optimize. We've also seen examples where it went wrong and where companies have defined 200 journeys, but then you have something that's so granular that it becomes very hard to even work with it. And from our experience, it's not necessary.
So what you say is there are 5 to 7 journeys in B2B that the customers go through. Probably there are the derivatives of these journeys. That's why maybe companies come up with 200 journeys, but most of the time they are under the big buckets of 5 to 7 journeys.
Exactly. They will all have sub-steps
what those journeys are?
Variations.
Okay.
Yes, we look at a version of that. Okay. It's a little different depending on what business you're in. If you're in a subscription business, for example, and you're selling a service, it'll be a slightly different set of journeys compared to when you're selling a product. But we look at one version of that, so you get an impression.
Okay.
And then once you have identified which journeys, you need to decide where you want to start. Build a fact base, understand the satisfaction level of your customers and how satisfaction is connected with business outcomes. So you also start where you likely get the biggest results, and then put a team on the journey and start improving it. And I'll go into more detail how.
How does McKinsey prioritize which journey to start with? Do you look at the impact delivered, or how do you prioritize what journey you want to start working on?
Yeah, ideally you do it based on data. So you talk to customers, you collect market research, and you look at customer satisfaction with the journey, and you look at how satisfaction correlates with outcomes. For example, with the win rate you have, with purchase intent, you can pick a metric. But then if you find a journey where you have a strong correlation, but you also have relatively low satisfaction, that's a good place to start.
So you start with the most problematic area then, most of the time?
Yes.
Okay.
You start where the pain is the biggest, because that's where you expect the biggest improvements.
Impact. Okay.
And I mean, if you want to establish a program and make that a success in the company, it's also great to start where it's most difficult, because if it's working there, then you can clearly make the case it'll work also on the other journeys, and it'll excite people and you'll have some impact early. So it's a good place to start.
Okay.
We would also, of course, always look deeper and qualitatively understand what are the pain points that customers have, what is the operational performance of the journey, where do we need to get that to form that decision. But fundamentally, you start where the pain is biggest.
Okay.
And to then sustain that change, once you have improved and re-engineered the journey, you need this entire base of the pyramid, because otherwise you'll soon slip back into a mode where things freeze and you, relative to your competitors, you fall behind. So you need to make sure that you build a continuous improvement system on customer experience.
And I believe this is the most difficult part, because McKinsey can be quite impactful in the way managing the program, But after the external support, I think the challenge for the companies is to make sure that the impact that has started is continuing on a long-term basis, that it's sustainable. Do you see that often the case, or is that in B2B, like it's probably very hard to give a ratio, but do you see the sustainability is there after you start the programs with your clients, or do you see that it's not always successful?
No, it's why we're highlighting that programs that are successful typically have those three elements. Mm-hmm. And when it's missing one of them, it typically isn't as successful.
Okay. Or so they are all important.
Yes, they're equally important, and it doesn't work if any one of them is missing in a significant way. And just to conclude on the one on the bottom, the sustained frontline change, the big idea there is that you need to build a feedback loop. You need to have a measurement system for the customer experience you're delivering. And it first of all needs to go all the way up from operational metrics, like for example, OTIF performance, like for example, lead times for your products, like for example, answer times in your call center, and link that to overall customer satisfaction, and in the end, bottom line results. Because that enables you to do something when you learn our NPS has dropped. Mm-hmm. It's a frustration that many of our clients have. They're measuring NPS, and then it changes, and then you don't quite know what to do. And if you have this measurement system that connects operational metrics with a journey level, with a top-level KPI, you can drill down, and it becomes relatively straightforward to devise actions. Mm-hmm. Now, since you have it quantified, and you can also make a link with a top-line metric that drives results, you can also make the case why you need to invest to fix one of those pain points. So that's a key component. The second one in that is use that granular measurement to provide individual feedback to people. And individual feedback means that if a sales rep had an interaction with a customer and the customer isn't that happy with the conversation, that feedback reaches the sales rep. If there is something wrong with a shipment, then ideally the person who has packed the box gets feedback from the customer. That this was great or that it wasn't great. And this is a very important motivator for people, especially those that don't have constant contact with customers. It's often a real aha moment when we bring everyone together for the first time, when we start optimizing journeys, and people from back office functions like logistics or IT hear how their work is affecting customers, mm-hmm. and how some of the policies they have make their lives difficult. That already is a big moment that makes the change happen. And having that on a daily basis is a big enabler.
Yeah, as you say, it's the aha moment. It's not the frontline sales who are in face to the customers on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But it's actually
they get direct feedback.
Yeah, they get direct feedback, but it's the whole organization from HR to manufacturing. I wonder how HR gets the feedback. I would be interested to hear that. Whether they hire the right talent, whether they are developing their people in the right way. But everything actually that is processed or that is operated in a company has an impact on customer experience.
Exactly. And that is also, if I get back to what we talked about earlier, that employee satisfaction going up. This feedback from customers to people who don't typically see them is a big driver of meaning in their jobs, and seeing how their actions satisfy customers is a driver of happiness. You also remove a lot of the stuff that is in the way of doing your job, serving customers, doing what the business is there for. You get rid of policies that help, you get rid of departmental friction. Mm-hmm. So that also helps with the employee experience. But this measurement piece is very important.
Because it adds meaning, it adds value to their daily jobs.
Yes.
If it is linked to the customer piece.
Absolutely.
So it all starts with the top of the pyramid, the purpose.
Yes, it
they
starts
are more
with the purpose.
Driven. Okay.
Yeah. let me move on. I don't quite see if it's changing anything. I'm afraid I'm now jumping slides. If we move to the next example, this is one for the top of the pyramid about building purpose and conviction and driving behavior change. And it's an example from work that we did with Orlando Airport. Not B2B, but a great visual example of how you can orchestrate behavior change. I mean, Orlando Airport gets lots of visitors who spend their vacations there. They go and visit Disney, they visit Universal Studios, they visit SeaWorld. And historically, the airport has not been a great experience for them. I mean, those companies do a great job at providing a fun experience. And then many people aren't such experienced travelers, so they go to the airport early. They have tons of time to spend. And there wasn't a lot to do except stand in line for the security scanning. And it was the end of their vacation, and it definitely wasn't ending on a high note. And that was when the airport executives and some people from the local business community got together, decided to do something about it and improve the experience. And a major element in that was to bring the airport community together and have them deliver a better experience. And that meant for people who work at Starbucks, for example, to not only perceive themselves as Starbucks employees, but also as members of the airport community,
to provide
and to make sure that the overall experience is good. To make sure that if the bathroom isn't clean, to say something and have it cleaned. If a traveler is uncertain where to go for check-in, to be able to help and give advice. And to reinforce that behavior, the team set up detailed standards, and they also designed those appreciation cards, where specific behaviors can be recognized, and it'll then get recognized in a rewards program. But even working with those cards and getting the recognition is already reinforcing the behavior change and make sure that the standards that the team have set themselves are actually lived.
So it all changed with a piece of card.
It's
the
not
experience in simple terms.
Yes, there's a lot more work than these cards, but defining behavior standards and then also mechanisms to bring them to life are a big element in that.
So how much did you measure the satisfaction of the travelers before and after?
So I don't know exactly where it was before. It wasn't good. And after, it was the leading airport in customer satisfaction in the J.D. Power ranking for 2 consecutive years. So quite a jump.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When we then think about how exactly you go about an optimization of customer experience, and we go to that middle part of the pyramid, it is all about optimizing customer journeys. And I thought it might make sense to revisit that concept and visualize a bit what we understand as a customer journey and why that perspective is so important. What you see on the visual is how companies typically measure performance and satisfaction, and that is within departments or within touch points. So they might measure satisfaction for the website, for the customer service desk, for an interaction with an account manager, or for a technical sales visit. But in the end, the customer has a goal. They want, for example, want to select a supplier, they want to complain, they want to make a payment. So it's not necessarily visiting a website or talking to an account manager that they're after, but they want an outcome. But then if you have this siloed measurement system and you just ask them, are you satisfied with the website? You might get quite good results. You might also see good operational KPIs like conversion rates for your website. But then if you look at the outcome you're delivering for your customer, they might be quite unhappy with the complexity they have to navigate. And in the end, all those 85% satisfaction ratings will multiply and you get to like 60%.
So it's not the measurement, the KPIs for each journey. It's the overall journey that matters. It's not
Yes.
the measurements at different touch points, but it's the overall journey that would be important.
Yes. I mean, you can measure at individual touch points, but it's very important to have that overall journey perspective and think about outcomes you want to deliver for customers to make all of this meaningful and to really optimize. And therefore, you also need to have a team from across functions together to work on a journey.
Okay. I would like to remind the audience that they can ask questions.
Do we have questions?
Not yet. I'm expecting that it will start with one and it will continue.
Great.
Okay.
What I have next is an overview of journeys that typically are relevant in a B2B environment and a way of prioritizing. So if you manage to get data on customer satisfaction and correlate that with a top-line metric like increasing share, then you can pull up a matrix like we should be seeing in a second.
It will come, I think. it's quite slow. Okay.
And you can then use that to prioritize and decide, is it identifying the products and services that I need as a customer that I need to optimize? Is it placing an initial order? Is it using the product and getting after sales service? So having that data really helps you to make prioritization decisions. And then, of course, as you're doing a survey, you'll also have the granularity behind that to learn what is it within those journeys that you would need to optimize. Now, in some environments in B2B, that's difficult, right? Because you have your business is concentrated, mostly it's key accounts, and you don't really do market research on a large scale or quantitative. But on the upside, your customers are super involved. And while that may not allow you to quantify everything, you can bring them in for a workshop. You can interview them individually on a one-by-one basis and not delegate that to a research agency. And that way you also get very rich insights, and it allows you to do something similar without the quantification.
Press the button when you're...
Yeah, I need to press the button in time when I want to go to the next slide. When we take the next steps and we have decided this is a journey we want to optimize, one of the big concepts that we apply when we redesign is that we start zero-based. That doesn't mean that we're not doing a diagnostic. Of course, we want to do that and spend a couple of weeks to learn what exactly is wrong, where's performance currently. But then we want to bring people who know the journey in detail together, knowing the customer feedback they have received about what their needs are, and then think about if we had to do this from scratch, if we had to do this zero-based, how would this journey look like? And for a moment, ignore all the constraints that you typically have in the business.
So you start with a clean sheet of paper.
Yes. And then, of course, you also need to get realistic again. You need to bring all the barriers and constraints in and scale that down to a minimum viable product that delivers the bulk of the improvement impact for your customers, but that is actually doable. But typically, this minimum viable product is still better than doing it incrementally, than going pain point by pain point and thinking, okay, is there something we can do to improve a little bit? That is why thinking about radical improvement and really having a vision for the journey is an important step. And then typically you figure out that all the things that require you to scale back to the minimum viable product are actually things you can work on. So you create a backlog of initiatives that you want to work through. For example, with one client, we have worked on the journey of connecting new homes to the electricity grid. And there was a perception that we absolutely require physical signatures and several of them throughout the process. So it came up as a barrier that we needed to take into account for a minimum viable product. But then after a couple of conversations with the legal department, turned out that this wasn't an actual barrier. It was a perceived one, and we were able to get rid of the signatures and digitize the process. Similar to that, you will probably have IT issues in that list of backlogs, and some of them you may be able to overcome. Some might be too expensive in the end, but it's a great way to start the optimization, to establish that vision, and then work towards that.
So the incremental impacts are building up the big purpose, the big picture. So what you're saying is it's important to start with little impacts and already prove the success of the program and come to the big impact for the program. No?
I think I try to say the opposite. I think that you need to think big and establish a vision for the journey you're optimizing. For example, how would reordering look like in future? Do I need to be in touch with the company at all, or would they predict what it is that I need and when I need it and how much, and then suggest that this is what I might want to reorder, and I just say, yes, that's right. And then you scale back from there and you figure out, well, predicting all of that is not really possible, but when customers log in, we can at least provide a suggestion of things they might want to reorder. And that probably leads to a better result than looking at the current situation and learning that it's difficult to navigate the product catalog. That would probably lead you to a different solution than predicting what it is the customer wants. And so we're advocating to think big and start zero-based. When you think about the full transformation program, it can make sense to start with a pilot and establish that the methodology is successful first. But when you think about an individual journey, we would say, let's start to think big and then scale back.
But I also believe that the incremental, the smaller steps could already be the proof of achieving the big success. And I believe it's also important to start celebrating the success with those small incremental steps before waiting for the big ambition to be achieved. It's always important for the people to have the ambition, the purpose in mind, but also going through each and every small step incrementally would also add up to the big purpose, in my opinion.
Yes, very important to celebrate successes along the way and also design what you're building in the way that you get those.
Okay. Press the button.
I'm looking at time, and I think we might actually want to jump to the case example that I've brought, because it brings some of these ideas more to life and especially helps in telling how you would improve customer journeys. Now, I think I need to wait a bit until the visual will come up. But the situation that I want to talk about is a chemicals company, relatively large, 20,000 employees, 20 billion revenues, present in 30 countries. That was in a situation where most business leaders wouldn't have made customer experience a priority. They had such high demand for their products and few competitors globally that they were selling it on an allocation basis. So customers would just be happy to get product, and they put up with a lot of pain to get their share. And a lot of pain was what was given to them when we looked at the current journey performance. When customers wanted to get information on availability, on availability of a product or on the price, they would need to call because there was a policy that prices can't be published. Then availability of the call center wasn't great, and it took a while to get back with a response on what the price actually is. Then to place an order, you would still need to fill a paper form, then not hear anything for a relatively long time, and then at some point probably get a call that the order can't be filled because your credit is blocked and you need to start from the beginning.
What a great customer experience.
And I'm not going to walk through all of that, but you get the picture. The customer experience wasn't pretty, and the CEO put himself out there and said, I want to make a quantum leap on customer experience and improve this significantly. Now, he also wanted to get improvements on bottom line results at the same time. And we already saw a couple of points that that would make this possible, right? When we initially look at a journey and do a diagnostic of where it stands, we also try to find root causes for what's happening. And for example, the issues with availability of products were first of all that availability in the ERP system wasn't always accurate and up to date. So people worked around the system, but it also meant that you can't really look into the system and find out if the product is there or it isn't there. And that led to lots of surprises. So there was an element of needing to work with a system in a different way to enable this.
Forecasting probably was also an issue.
Yes, and then improving product availability was also a big lever that came out, because the different functions were very siloed and they weren't talking. And I mean that's the core of a functioning SNOP process. So getting them together and improving how we plan, what to produce, which customers to allocate to, and how much of it to keep in stock was a big improvement lever. And if we look a little bit at the results that the transformation has delivered.
But before we go to the results, you were talking about pricing, that the customers could not get quotes because they were kept secret. So how did you manage that part? How did you make prices transparent for everybody? Or was it not transparent for everybody? How did you solve that issue?
I mean, there are different ways you can go to make prices instantaneously available. The easiest is, of course, to have one price for everyone and publish that on a portal or in a web shop, with a difficulty that often this is not what you want to do. You want to differentiate pricing, and you don't want every customer to know what everyone else is paying. So the solution here is you have a portal where customers log in and they see the prices that are agreed for their products. And if the conditions change, that'll also be reflected. So it becomes transparent what pricing they have agreed. And you don't need to go through a loop to clarify that.
Okay.
But there are, it requires that you have rules for pricing. You can no longer make it up along the way and think about pricing only when the customer asks. It requires big changes in how you're setting up your processes. And this is exactly what happened here. After 16 weeks, the CEO was quite impressed, and he said, you surpassed all my expectations. I'm quite excited. And what the team had achieved by then was a 2 to 3% margin uplift, mainly from optimizing the SNOP process and connecting all the different bits and pieces in that, and using an analytics algorithm to optimize all of that. And you need to use, I think it was a machine learning technique in this case, because it's a big non-linear problem. But the team worked through this and they found a solution that optimizes what gets produced, how much of it gets produced, how much is kept on stock, and whom to allocate it to optimize profit.
So was there an SNOP system before or not at all? Did you improve the current SNOP system or did you build it up from scratch?
I mean, we built upon what was there, but this piece didn't exist. So
okay, it's almost like building it from scratch. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's much easier to build something from scratch than trying to improve already an ongoing system, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah. So the margin has improved by 2 to 3% in 16 weeks.
Yes. Then there's simplification of business processes, like, for example, the credit scoring. That just wasn't necessary to check or to block big customers because there was a dispute for an invoice, for example. So cutting out those unnecessary steps saved quite a bit of work and in the end freed up 15% of FTE time. It's not a direct cost saving in this case because there are other things that the company wanted to reinvest that to, but that's also worth something. Mm-hmm. And then we had an increase in customer satisfaction in Net Promoter Index of 24 mm-hmm. points. So also quite significant.
Over a period of?
16 weeks.
That also.
I mean, that is for a few journeys and one portion of the business. Mm-hmm. But they were also in the process of scaling up at that point. They had 11 squads, so teams running, scaled up from 3 that they had quickly after the start. And at the moment, they are taking the program global. So it started in 1 region, but now they have digital studios in 3 regions. And all of this is growing, and it's becoming the new way of working at the company. When I look at a few of the things that have been built, the obvious one is a customer portal, and comes up in nearly all the conversations we have with clients about what it is that they need to do to improve customer experience. The answer is always, we need a customer portal. And it has all the features that you would typically want to see there. But the big changes really aren't programming the portal, but making everything in the back end work to make this available. Mm-hmm. To have, for example, the credit scoring online, to be able to see your orders, to see when they would arrive, and make sure that the data is in place and that you deliver a good experience. I've talked a bit about what it is about examples that the team have built. And here we're seeing a visualization of this snrp process. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, they automated the credit checks. They worked on statistical forecasting to better predict demand and then get around those shortages, which were a big frustration for customers. And of course, also waste in the sense that there was demand, but you couldn't meet it. They worked on a throughput optimization model based on predicted quality, again, to improve product availability, inventory holding, and they used the agile methodology that the team had developed also to roll out the new warehousing and packaging. Mm-hmm. And so you see, it's not just front-end digitization and building the portal, is really going deep into business processes and using a journey view, looking at customer outcomes and always prioritizing what has the biggest impact for the customers to optimize here that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm. I remember from my past experiences, this is years ago, we had like 2,000 SKUs where we were putting all the forecasting for the next 12 months individually per SKU.
Yeah.
Hearing the market feedback, the customer feedback. And it was always the machine forecasting, the statistical forecasting was beating us. So I believe it was the case here, which is quite striking as a marketing manager, product manager, to see that the machine forecasting is better than your individual forecasting. Yeah. But I can relate a lot of what you're saying here. That
and it's not an activity that salespeople enjoy, is it?
Not at all.
So getting rid of that manual forecasting is a plus also for them.
Exactly, yeah, it saves time.
Yeah.
Okay. I would again like to remind people that they can ask questions.
Yeah. If we don't have questions, I have 2 more things that I want to talk about, which is about the way of working on these teams, because I think that's super important. The first one I've touched upon is to make the teams cross-functional. So to have all departments that contribute to make a journey a success represented on the team with people who have deep knowledge in how the technicalities and processes work. And you can take that customer perspective and are open to try new ways of working. The second bit is you need to integrate business and IT in those teams And in most B2B companies, IT will not just mean front-end developers, but also people who understand the SAP system and can either program or at least trigger changes in that, so that the team is able to not only deliver concepts of how you might improve a journey, but actually deliver an improved process, an improved journey every 2 or 4 weeks. So the team will work in sprints. We like to borrow from the agile methodology here. So everything will be time boxed. The team works autonomously. They need to be empowered to make decisions based on what they think or what their insights tell them is most important for the customer, and then deliver those products, and every 2 or 4 weeks show in a demonstration what it is that they have built, and there get feedback. And it's a very different way of working compared to most projects that we're seeing, which are much more in a waterfall style, where you try at the beginning to have a plan that specifies resourcing, activities, and timelines for something you're doing, even if you're doing it for the very first time. And very often you get it wrong. And with this methodology, you try to acknowledge that things change, and you learn a lot as you're building things. So priorities might also change, and it's built in. But to do that, you need to run a very tight process. Every morning you prioritize what are tasks that I want to accomplish today and who's doing what. And in the evening you look at what is still in progress and what is done. And in those 2 or 4 week increments, you plan what are the features, the user stories, you always come from a customer perspective, that we want to build and that we want to enhance our journey with. It's also important that this team is actually present. It's good to have a relatively small team, but have them there at least 4 days a week in one location, and have them fully focused on this. Because if the team becomes too big and everyone just spends a little bit of their time, it very quickly gets fragmented and people have excuses and things don't get delivered. So this team setup is very important to make the journey improvement successful.
So this is also designing the office in a completely different way of working, right? The office space as well.
Yeah, it's not, you should have some open plan space, because it helps with communication between the teams. I mean, you wouldn't need to have everyone really in one room. You could also have 2 or 3 rooms. And then you also need a lot of wall space, because visual management is big in this methodology, and it helps if you can keep track of where each of the tasks stands and how much progress you have made throughout the weeks. You have those big walls full of sticky notes that represent that.
I have a question from the audience. What is an ideal team size then? And I already have an answer. Somebody says 4. From your experience, what's the ideal team size for such a setup?
It depends a bit on the complexity of the journey. 4 would be ideal if you have a simple journey. I think most of the improvement projects, at least with our clients, who are big and complex companies, will require larger teams, because you need to have the functions involved and have all of that knowledge represented on the team. You need to have IT, but then from the IT side, you need front-end programmers, you need back-end programmers, you probably need a system architect. And so if you just go through the different roles, you need a product owner who does all the prioritization and content development, and you need a designer. You quickly end up with 8, 10, maybe up to 15 people who you would have on such a team.
So do you train the teams before you start such a program on what an agile way of working is?
Yes.
Or they learn it throughout the program, on-the-job training?
Most of it is on the job. It's agile, but we also do a little bit of training so that everyone gets on the same page, because there are also many different interpretations of agile, and it's important to understand what framework exactly do we want to use to apply, and then agree on those rules and the terminology. But then most of the learning happens on the job. partly from agile coaches, partly from the Scrum Master, partly just based on the experience that everyone brings and contributes. And that works relatively well. And most of the team members I've worked with found an extremely fun experience to do this. And they relished in the speed that those teams typically have and the degree of freedoms that this gives them.
And they see the impact quite fast.
Yeah, it's quite motivating.
Okay.
The second thing, and I believe the last slide that I have brought, if I can still navigate to there, is getting user feedback on ideas in every stage of development. This is also something that we find very important because it allows you to focus on ideas that work and weed out the ones that don't very quickly. You waste very little time if you already get user feedback on ideas that are still on a sticky note level, and someone has taken 20 minutes to think about improvements that they want to make, and then you already go to customers or users and get their feedback on this idea, and if this exactly is what they need, if they don't need it at all, and then you reprioritize. And then you start developing the ideas that got prioritized further. You think about initial screen designs, but you can also think about initial process designs. And then again, test those. And then at every stage of detailing, you test and you learn and you adapt. And so before you invest into building something in an IT system and it becomes really expensive, you're already through many rounds of testing, and you're quite certain that what you're doing there will add value for the customer.
Okay, very interesting. And actually, this bridges to the next topic. When you say user feedback, I think we would be very interested to get feedback from the audience that attended this webcast. It is very interesting, Thilo. I think we could talk for hours. I feel like we just started. Thank you so much for your time. For people that are interested to hear about such topics, please visit the conference board website and see the consoles on customer experience, market insights, and analytics, so that you can hear more about our hot topics in a peer-to-peer networking platform. Well, thank you very much. And hope we continue the discussions on different topics related to customer experience, Thilo.
Thank you for having me, Demet.
Thank you.